are not ends in themselves, but are expedient means by which he leads people to the one Buddha vehicle, which he's only now going to reveal for the first time in the Lotus Sutra. Pardon me, in the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? Is everything okay there, bro? Okay. This concept is referred to as the replacement of the three vehicles with the one vehicle. And I think there was one more thing I was going to try and read, and I'll probably space out on being able to find it. Where is it? Not the five major principles of the five. Is this it? No. Here it is. Why do I have this mark? Oh, essential teaching. Okay. This is important. So, all right. I need to now go to essential teaching, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about the last 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra. But when we're talking about it in regards to the latter day of the law, we're talking about the essential teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the Buddhism of sowing. Okay. So if you went to page 167 under E, essential teaching. It's called Honman in Japanese. Also, original teaching. Now, understand that. Essential teaching, original teaching. He's not talking about the Flower Garland Sutra or anything like that. And it's not even talking about the Lotus Sutra. It's original teaching. Okay? Because the essential teaching is what? That I'm going to read about here. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. When did Nam-myoho Renge-kyo begin? It has no beginning. That's why it is the original teaching. It is the origin of all Buddhas. All Buddhas manifest in order to reveal this origin that is the means by which they attain Buddhahood themselves, so that people that will embrace that teaching with faith can attain Buddhahood themselves in their present form. So, there's two different definitions, I believe, here. Two. All right. So, first the Tentai, or the harvest definition. Essential teaching, also original teaching. The teaching expounded by Shakyamuni from the perspective of his true identity as the Buddha who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, which he only revealed for the first time out of all of his years of teaching in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. That was the first time he had ever revealed that. The teaching expounded by Shakyamuni from the perspective of his true identity as the Buddha who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago. It consists of the latter 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra, from the emerging from the earth through the universal worthy chapter. You understand what he just said? Doesn't pertain. The Honman, the essential teaching, is not in the first 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra. It's only in the last 14 chapters. In Words and Phrases of the Lotus Sutra, which is Tentai's work, Tentai classified the content of the sutra into two parts. The first 14 chapters are theoretical teaching, also known as trace teachings, and the latter 14 chapters, or essential teaching, original teaching. He further explains that Shakyamuni expounded these two teachings from two, respectively, different identities. The Shakyamuni Buddha who attained enlightenment in India expounded in the theoretical teaching, while the Shakyamuni who cast off his transient identity as the Buddha enlightened in that lifetime in India and revealed his true identity as the Buddha who attained enlightenment in the remote past expounded in the essential teaching. But that essential teaching is taught on the surface, and that teaching shows that he attained Buddhahood when?
Long time ago.
Numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago, which is not an original state. Okay? It's not an original teaching. Tentai identified the Buddha of the essential teaching as the true Buddha, and the Buddha of the theoretical teaching as the true Buddha's provisional manifestation, or a provisional Buddha. He respectively compared the relationship between them and between their teachings to that of the moon in the sky and its reflection on the surface of a pond. So even Tentai made that kind of a huge distinction between the things that are said by Shakyamuni in the first 14 chapters and the things that he says that are revealed in the second 14 chapters. In contrast with the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, which represents Buddhahood as a potential in the lives of all people, the essential teaching describes it as a reality manifest in the eternal life of the true Buddha. The core of the essential teaching is the lifespan 16th chapter, which reveals Shakyamuni's enlightenment in the distant past. Moreover, it reveals the three mystic principles, the true effect, the original enlightenment that Shakyamuni Buddha attained in the remote past, the true cause, the practice he carried out to attain that, that enlightenment, and the true land where the Buddha lives and teaches together. They clarify the reality of the Buddha's enlightenment. Second definition of essential teaching. In his writings, now this is the difference between what does the Lotus Sutra say and what does the orally transmitted teaching say. Okay, because now we're going to say, what does Nichiren say this means, what I just read and what I just referred to, now that it's the latter day of the law? According to Shakyamuni's teachings from the Harvest, he says, in his writing, Nichiren sometimes uses the term essential teaching to indicate the essential teaching of the latter day of the law, that is, the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The object of devotion for observing the mind reads, the essential teaching of Shakyamuni's lifetime, and that revealed by Nichiren at the beginning of the latter day, are both pure and perfect, in that both lead directly to Buddhahood. Shakyamuni's, however, is the Buddhism of the harvest, and this, mine, is the Buddhism of sowing. The core of his teaching is the one chapter in two halves, and the core of mine is the 5 characters of the Daimoku alone. Nichiren thus identified Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the teaching he revealed at the beginning of the latter day, as the essential teaching for that age. From this viewpoint, in the same treatise, Nichiren states the difference between the theoretical and the essential teachings is as great as that between heaven and earth. Nevertheless, even the difference between the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life of the theoretical teaching and that of the essential teaching pales into significance. That difference that pales into significance when compared with is the difference between the essential teaching, that of the latter half of the Lotus Sutra, and the essential teaching revealed by Nichiren at the beginning of the latter day of the law, or Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Pales into insignificance. That's a very strong wording, but that's exactly how we're to perceive and understand it. That's faith in Nichiren's teaching. Pales into insignificance. Hence, he termed his essential teaching the unique essential teaching. And then in the Gosho, on the mystic principle of true cause, which is one of those that we don't have a translation to, that I referred to last week when you said, are there any that aren't available in Volume 1, Volume 2? The Gosho on the mystic principle of the true cause is one of the ones that I said, no, it's not translated. A writing that he gave to his immediate successor. And then there's a 5-fold something. I'm going to just go ahead. I know I had a lot of other stuff prepared as preparatory, but I'll just go ahead and get started so I don't run completely out of time. Okay, so now, pardon?
8:38.
Huh?
It's 8:38.
It's 8:38. I have time. Okay, I've only got to read 10 pages.
All right.
All right, this is the first 10 pages. Well, actually, I really should go. I'm going to go, okay. All the sutras start with the first chapter of all the sutras, evidently, supposedly, are almost all called introduction. So the first chapter of the Lotus Sutra is also called introduction. It sort of gives a lay of the land of what's been happening. And it's kind of basically saying, if you didn't read the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, what we just came out of is the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, and now we're here. Okay? So, but the Daishonin in the last point that he makes, the last point that he makes on the introduction chapter, he says, the heavenly drums sounded of themselves. He says, the commentary, Words and Phrases, Volume 3, Tentai, says, heavenly drums sounded of themselves is symbolic of one who takes it upon oneself to preach without being asked. got to say this so that you know that I'm not in trouble for doing what I'm doing. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this passage praises the way in which the auspicious omens appearing in the land and other lands are all the same. One who takes it upon oneself to preach without being asked refers to the fact that Shakyamuni, thus come one, has taken it upon himself to preach the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law without being asked. Now Nichiren and his followers also take it on themselves to preach without being asked. When they declare that the Nembutsu leads to the hell of incessant suffering, Mr. Lee, that Zen is the teaching of the heavenly devil, Mr. Lee, the true word will ruin the nation, and that precepts is traitorous, they are taking it upon themselves to preach without being asked. Because they do so, the three types of powerful enemies have appeared on the scene, and they are attacked. Cool as hell. That's my job. All right, I don't have time to get into all of that. Someday I'll read this all to you, from top to bottom, chapter by chapter, chapter by chapter. We've already done it around the table. For tonight, let's finish your explanation, though, by going into the most, the easiest thing to understand, I think. And hopefully you'll find that to be the same way. Hopefully, with faith in what Shakyamuni is saying here and then Nichiren's interpretation of it, you'll understand the answer to all the other questions you asked me about. Are we sure we didn't miss something? How would they have known? Yada, yada, yada. I was going to read you the life of Nichiren Daishonin, which you will also find. If you're going to read the orally transmitted teachings, any of you, by the way, start with reading the foreword by Daisaku Ikeda. Then absolutely, don't start reading in the middle or chapter 1. Whatever you do, then read the life of Nichiren Daishonin so you understand who it is that wrote this. And then after that, because you may think you know the life of Nichiren Daishonin and you don't, all right? Then after that, read the editor's notes so you understand how it was translated and why. Those are all things that you've got to understand to have a clear understanding of what it is you're reading or going to try and grasp for the sake of teaching it to others. If you haven't even taken the time or the effort to understand that stuff, which is foundational, which is going to set your brain up to catching it in the correct spirit, then you're not really serious about teaching it to others. You're really interested in expressing to others how much you know. How many times you've read the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, for instance. That has nothing to do with whether or not you understand anything of what it says. Okay, so going to chapter 2, expedient means. Point 1, regarding the expedient means from page 20 of the orally transmitted teachings. Point 1, it says translator's notes. So this is coming from Mr. Burton Watson, who happens to be the world's most renowned translator of Japanese and Chinese and Sanskrit texts. He's died in the last couple of years. I call him the Kumarajiva of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. Translator's note, according to words and phrases, which would be Tentai, there are 3 types of hoben or expedient means. Nancy, this is again your answer again. The first is known as Hoyu hoben, or adaptations of the law expedient means, teachings, expedient means. Teachings that were preached in accordance with people's capacities and tastes. They stress the truth of impermanence and the severing of attachment to the phenomenal world and correspond to Hinayana and early Mahayana, which is the basis of most of your questions, Mr. Lee. The second is called Notsu hoben, or expedient means that can lead one in. Teachings that the Buddha preached as a gateway to the true teaching. The third is called Himyo hoben, or the secret and wonderful expedient means, which corresponds to the ultimate truth, which all of these have been leading toward. Okay? Secret and wonderful refers to the fact that the Buddha concealed the truth for the first more than 40 years of his preaching life. As I just read to you from the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, he says, in these more than 40 years I have not yet revealed the truth. Explaining it only in the Lotus Sutra, because that's when he finally explains it. After he's preached the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, he goes into the Lotus Sutra, and that's where he explains it. So let me start that sentence again. The third is called Hemiohoben, or secret and wonderful expedient means, which corresponds to the ultimate truth. Secret and wonderful refers to the fact that the Buddha concealed the truth. Concealed, what's that mean? He didn't reveal it. Concealed just means didn't show it. Okay? He left it hidden. Why is it hidden? Because he hasn't revealed it. All right? Secret and wonderful refers to the fact that the Buddha concealed the truth for the first more than 40 years of his preaching life, explaining it only in the Lotus Sutra. Unlike the first two expedients, the third type is not only leads people to the truth, but simultaneously contains the truth. So even though it's called an expedient, it's really not an expedient because it led you in. You're in now. So it's not only, it is also the truth. Did you understand that difference? Again, let me very quickly. The first is Hoyuhoben, adaptation of the law, expedient means. These are teachings from the Agamas and early Mahayana. All right, Hemiohoben would be like the Wisdom Sutras, things that are getting closer and closer to the beginning of the preaching of the immeasurable, or the threefold Lotus Sutra. Okay, now we're getting into the threefold Lotus Sutra. That's really where those Hemiohoben actually occur, because do they actually take you to the truth? No, because what is the truth? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. It's not revealed until the latter day of the law. That's the point I'm trying to make, and that's actually the point that the translator is trying to make, and that's the point that the Daishonin is going to make now. So let me go ahead and keep reading. Page 20. Words and phrases, last paragraph. Volume 3 states, the Ho of Hoben, expedient means secret. The Bin means wonderful. Wonderful leads to secret. This is identical with the truth, which is kept secret. When we examine what is meant by the priceless jewel sewn into the lining of the man's robe, chapter 8, prophecy of the enlightenment for 500 disciples, we see that it is in no way different from the jewel in the top knot of the king, chapter 14, peaceful practices. And the man who is called a hired laborer is in fact no different from or apart from the rich man's son, chapter 4, belief and understanding. All of these similes point to what is secret, what is wonderful. And if you understand or know what any of those parables are about, they're all talking about secret treasures or secret realities that the person that actually possessed them does not know are in his possession. It's about a jewel that's hidden in a top knot, one that's sewn into a lining of a robe, and the guy walks around, forever not knowing that this priceless gem is in the robe. The other one's about the laborer who leaves home at an early age and becomes so disheveled he doesn't recognize his father who hires him. Again, the theoretical first half of the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so, which is kept secret. When we examine what is meant by the, I've already gone through that. The man who is called, okay. Let me read the whole thing again so I don't booger it up. Words and phrases, volume 3 states, the Ho of Hoben, expedient means secret. The Bin means wonderful. Wonderful leads to secret. This is identical with the truth, which is kept secret. When we examine what is meant by the priceless jewel sewn into the lining of the man's robe, we see that it is in no way different from the jewel in the top knot of the king. And the man who is called the hired laborer is in fact no different from or apart from the rich man's son. All these are similes. All of these similes point to what is secret, what is wonderful. The fact that you already have what is priceless, indestructible, and eternal. Your Buddhahood. It is as the Lotus Sutra says, continuing in the second paragraph on page 21, only I, Shakyamuni, understand the laws, characteristics, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions do likewise. Why? Because we're all Buddhas. We all achieve the same state of understanding. We all know Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is in reality the thing that makes them so. And then he says, and he continues to say this in the expedient means. Stop, no need to speak. My law is wonderful and difficult to ponder. Therefore, The term secret is used to explain the ho of Hoban, and the term wonderful is used to explain the bin. This is, in fact, the meaning that underlies this chapter. It is called, it is called the expedient means chapter. On the words and phrases, which would be Miolo, Volume 3 says, the third type of expedient means, which we just discussed as the hemiohoben, is characterized as secret and wonderful. Because it can be termed wonderful, it is identical with the truth. The perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. But the three teachings, the Tripitaka, the connecting, and the specific teaching, which are the three of the four divisions, right, prior to the perfect. You've got perfect as the last of the four. You've got the Tripitaka, which is the intro, the connecting, which ties it to Mahayana, the specific, which is the Wisdom Sutras, and then we're now into the perfect teaching, which is the Lotus and Nirvana, are characterized as not identical with the truth. Okay, let me say it again. On words and phrases, Miolo, Volume 3 says, the third type of expedient means is characterized as secret and wonderful. Because it can be termed wonderful, it is identical with the truth. The perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. But the three teachings, other than the perfect teaching, the Tripitaka, the connecting, and the specific teachings, are characterized as not identical with the truth. Therefore, it is in contrast to these non-identical teachings that the teaching of the Lotus Sutra is characterized as being identical with the truth. The record of, now, and then Nichiren says, okay, that was Tentai and Miolo's take. Now let me clean it up. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the priceless jewel mentioned in the passage of commentary from words and phrases is the jewel sewn into the lining of the robe, which is the same as the jewel in the king's topknot. And the hired laborer is absolutely identical with the rich man's son. But in the end, persons who slander the law and fail to have faith in it are followers of the provisional teachings outside the body of the truth. So, if I lay this truth on you, I allow you to understand, I revealed the secret, and yet you still wonder, do I have my shit together to know what I'm talking about? You fail to listen to what I'm saying and instead question whether I know what I'm saying. You're creating slander. I need to not even tell you because you're going to have this kind of reaction. And that's to slander the law, because that's really what we're talking about here. Yeah. So, Mr. Lee, that's why we keep it secret. We don't propagate it without consideration of the circumstance, because we're trying to protect those that don't have the wisdom to perceive that what we're saying is the truth, and therefore slander it by not believing or saying things that reject it. Do you follow? Okay, yes. So the record of the oral, let me go back again. I'm liking the nodding here. Thank you for the reinforcement. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the priceless jewel mentioned in the passage of commentary from the words and phrases, Tentai, is the jewel sewn in the lining of the robe, which is the same as the jewel in the king's topknot. And the hired labor is absolutely identical with the rich man's son. But in the end, persons who slander the law and fail to have faith in it are followers of the provisional teachings outside the body of the truth, which is the perfect teaching. The teachings represented by two types of expedient means, those first two that I listed, which only get you part way there, they don't get you in the door, and are not the truth themselves. And those that, the two types of expedient means known as adaptations of the law and those that can lead one in. For that reason, such persons cannot recognize that the two jewels or the two persons in the above similes are the same and no different from each other. They can't. No, the secret is that no matter how many times I say the truth, you're not, if you don't qualify through your own karmic causality, your own pursuit, words are not going to do this for you. This is a reflection of your karma. This is a reflection of your previous actions. This is a reflection of your seeking spirit. Okay? So, if you don't have all that, you're going to listen to what I'm saying and say, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. And you'll leave it at that. Okay? You won't get to where we're already at. You never even opened your ears enough to hear what there was to be said. Okay? What there was more to know. He says, and then the Daishonin follows it up like he does everything else. He creates no separation between himself and us, or how we should perceive this as it relates to us, not just to him as Nichiren Daishonin. He says, now, Nichiren and his followers who recite Nam-myoho Renge-kyo are observers of the secret and wonderful expedient means, teachings that are within the body of the truth. Therefore, after the title of the sutra, Myoho Renge-kyo, comes the chapter entitled Expedient Means. In explaining the statement in words and phrases that this is identical with the truth, which is kept secret, in his On the Words and Phrases, Volume 3, Myolo says, the perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. And if identical means the perfect teaching, then this must be another name for the Lotus Sutra. And what does the Lotus Sutra reveal that's so substantial? What's the key concept out of the Lotus Sutra? What? You're already the Buddha, exactly as you are. Right. Okay, so he's saying the perfect teaching is regarded identical with the truth. What is the truth? The truth is the truth of the middle way, okay, which is the same as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And if identical means perfect teaching, then this must be another name for the Lotus Sutra. Identical must indicate the truth that ordinary people are identical with the highest level of being, or the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena. The Buddha of true aspect, the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena. What did he say preceding that phrase? What did he state just preceding that statement or that qualification of the Buddha of the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena? The Buddha of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is what it actually is saying. Okay. Let me translate it? Okay. Let me go backwards and translate it. Starting from that, again, page 22, first paragraph. In explaining the statement in words and phrases, from Tiantai, that this is identical with the truth, which is kept secret, in his On Words and Phrases, Myolo says, the perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. And if identical means the perfect teaching, then this must be another name for the Lotus Sutra, which reveals Ichinen Sanzen, which is why you're already a Buddha, exactly as you are, even though you're a nine-world person. You don't have to go to a Buddha land to become the Buddha. Do you understand? Right? Okay, so identical must indicate the truth that ordinary people are identical. What's identical mean?
The same.
Exactly the same. With the highest level of being. What's the highest level of being then?
Buddha.
The Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena. You have to understand. True Buddha. A true Buddha. A Buddha, a Nam-myoho Renge-kyo thus come one. That's the distinction. We're not talking about many treasures even at this point. Do you understand? All right. So he's saying, identical must indicate the truth. That means that this is a fact. This is you can't change this fact. That's truth. Must indicate the truth that ordinary people are identical with the highest level of being, or the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena, which I am. I'm a Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one. I've said it many times. This is where I get that from. Perfect refers to the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. That's what says I'm a Buddha in my present form. That's what's only revealed in the Lotus Sutra, and that's what's only revealed in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, in the Honman, essential teaching of the Lotus Sutra. Though the words identical and perfect are different, they are each another name for wonderful. So understand, when it says that They may be different words, but this is all the same thing. This is the wonderful law. Could be referred to the perfect law. All living beings are in fact the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena. That all living beings are in fact Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come ones, is a wonderful thing. An unfathomable thing. You couldn't wrap your head around this unless you're already a Buddha, dude. But persons who slander the law are at present unaware of this fact. Therefore, it is referred to as being secret. It's not a secret to Buddhists or enlightened ones. The record also says, he says, in case you didn't catch that whole drift, let me give you, phase 2. The record also says the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm. Now, what's that? What's the Dharma realm? Reality as we experience it. The 3,000 worlds, 3,000 realms, okay, of the Dharma realm. The Dharma realm is everything as it actually is. Okay, that's the Dharma realm, the truth, right? May be termed secret and wonderful. Secret means strict, without a single exception. Without a single exception. The 3,000 worlds, every single one of them exist in one's life. Now, why is he re-emphasizing? And then he goes, there is nothing more unfathomable than this. What is it about the 3,000 worlds? The 3,000 realms are the 3,000 worlds. What about that is unfathomable? The record also says the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm, 3,000 realms, may be termed secret and wonderful. Secret means strict or without a single exception. Without a single exception, all things possess the 3,000 realms. That's the whole point. The 3,000 worlds, every single one of them, exist in one's life. There is nothing more unfathomable than this. Why? What is included in the 3,000 worlds that makes the fact that they are without exception in every single living being's life? Buddhahood. It's always about Buddhahood. It's Buddhahood, the secret, the top knot, the jewel. It's Buddhahood, 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 Buddhahood. It's always this. It's always this. And it not coming. That's how secret it is. It's that difficult to perceive correctly, consistently, moment to moment. That's why we have a practice that rejuvenates that Buddhahood, that enlightened state of mind. Okay. Okay. So where am I? All right. Though the words identical and perfect are different, they are each another name for wonderful. That all living beings are in fact the Buddha of the true aspect of all phenomena is a wonderful thing, an unfathomable thing. But all persons who slander the law are at present unaware of this fact, therefore it is referred to as being secret. The record also says the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm may be termed secret and wonderful. Secret means strict or without a single exception. The 3,000 worlds, every single one of them exists in one's life, including Buddhahood. Everybody. Even persons who are called great slanderers of the law will in time come to accept and uphold Myoho Renge-kyo, which would mean what? That they attained Buddhahood. They attained the way. They were no longer filled with delusion. That they had achieved the Himyo-hoben, right? They're in. All right? Even persons who are called great slanderers of the law will in time, just like with Bodhisattva never disparaging, those people all came around to attain Buddhahood, right?
Yes.
All right, because of the preaching of the Lotus Sutra to them by never disparaging. Even persons who are called great slanderers of the law will in time come to accept and uphold Myoho Renge-kyo. This is the purpose of the expedient means chapter of the Lotus Sutra. to allow everybody to come in, to start the process of reading the perfect teaching and understanding. We just now shifted and changed languages. What you thought you understood, you really didn't understand. That's really what the Lotus Sutra is saying. Everything I've been saying up until now isn't really the case. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's not in any of the teachings until you start to read this sutra, beginning with the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra. Do you understand? It can't be found anywhere else. Okay. Now that we have entered the latter day of the law, Nichiren and his followers are carrying out this task correctly. To take the persons and teachings of the sutras preached prior to the Lotus Sutra and lead them into the body of teachings of the Lotus Sutra. This is the purpose of the Expedient Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra. It is also termed the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form, or the consistency from beginning to end, the consistency of the 10 factors. Why does it say this is also termed the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form? Now that we have entered the latter day of the law, Nichiren and his followers are carrying out this task correctly. To take the persons and teachings of the sutras preached prior to the Lotus Sutra and lead them to the body of the teachings of the Lotus Sutra. This is the purpose of the Expedient Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra. This is also termed the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form, or their consistency from beginning to end. The consistency of the 10 factors. Again, the Expedient Means chapter represents the 10 worlds, or in another sense, it represents ignorance or darkness. Myoho Rengekyo, or the Lotus Sutra, stands at the apex of the 10 worlds and at the same time represents the Dharma nature. It exemplifies the principle that earthly desires are identical with enlightenment and that the sufferings of birth and death are identical with nirvana. Why did it say what it just said? This is also termed the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. What is entailed in the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form? What assures the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form? Faith in the Buddha's teaching. And the teacher and the Buddha's teaching that we're following in the latter day is the Buddha of the latter day, Nichiren Daishonin. Well, we refer to as the true or the original Buddha because it's the original teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo that his teaching is based on and nothing more than that. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what he's talking about here, this is also termed the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form, is that you've now absolutely entered the way. You're no longer have a Buddha in theory. Mm-hmm. You are now on the 6 stages of practice path. You cannot revert back into only being a Buddha in theory. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. You've heard the name of the words of the truth. That's why this was the attainment of Buddhahood in your present form. That's what chapter 2 actually starts with. Naming the words of the truth. The truth begins with the Expedient Means chapter identifying the fact that he hasn't yet revealed the truth. Right? Or actually the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra. Again, the Expedient Means chapter represents the 10 worlds, or in another sense, it represents ignorance or darkness. Myoho Renge-kyo, or the Lotus Sutra, stands at the apex of the 10 worlds. Okay? But what did he just say? Let me slow that down. God, this is shit so deep, I can't get past the sentence. Again, the Expedient Means chapter, the bottom of page 22. The Expedient Means chapter represents the 10 worlds, or in another sense, it represents ignorance or darkness. Myoho Renge-kyo, or the Lotus Sutra, stands at the apex of the 10 worlds. Now, if it's at the apex of the 10 worlds, it must also be included, though, in this representation of ignorance or darkness. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. That's why he's saying it's always inclusive of everything, not just the good shit, all the shit. All right? Okay. Again, the expedient means chapter represents the 10 worlds, or in another sense, it represents ignorance or darkness. Myoho Rengekyo, or the Lotus Sutra, stands at the apex of the 10 worlds, and at the same time represents the Dharma nature. Is at the same time represents the thing that is inclusive of all of it, right? It exemplifies the principle that earthly desires are identical with enlightenment. Why? Because it's life. You can attain Buddhahood only if you're alive. All living things have desire. Okay, and that the sufferings of birth and death are identical with nirvana, or the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. Why? Because it's only because of the sufferings of birth and death that we've become incarnate as a temporary gathering of the 5 components. The sufferings of birth and death goes along with that. That's also the only way we achieve Buddhahood in our present form and are able to express it as in a manifest state. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
All right, so now, the perfect teaching, he goes on. So you see how I've got these 2 little arrows here? He starts talking about the perfect teaching from Myolo. Now he's going over from Tentai. Now he's going to go over and he's going to discuss it and re-clarify again what it's saying. The perfect teaching. Because each time he's talking about the perfect teaching, he's referring to Lotus Sutra, talking about the perfect teaching, or the perfect teaching as it's been qualified by Tentai, and then further qualified by Myolo. But what he's really, why is he writing that all in here? Because what is the perfect teaching that he's really talking about, that they've been talking about? Nam Myoho Rengekyo. Nam Myoho Rengekyo. Myoho Rengekyo is the Buddhism of harvest. Nam Myoho Rengekyo is the Buddhism of sowing. And that's really the key to understand. All right? So he's saying the perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth, refers to the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. The perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth that we all have innate Buddhahood, refers to the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, which is the theoretical teaching that we all theoretically possess innate Buddhahood. Do you understand?
Yes.
Wonderful and identical with the truth are synonymous. That means they're exactly the same thing. Wonderful and identical with the truth are the same thing. Perfect and wonderful are the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, expressed in a single word. Perfect refers to the true aspect of all phenomena. A commentary, the Annotations on Great Concentration and Insight, Volume 1, explains the word perfect by saying, perfect means perfect and interfused, or perfect and full. Perfect and interfused refers to the theoretical teaching. Perfect and full refers to the essential teaching. Perfect also refers to the 2 practices of concentration and insight. This is again all referring to the theoretical element of Tentai. This is all Buddhism, the harvest. Again, it refers to the fact that we are made up of the 2 elements of body and mind, which is what all those mind candy sutras are all based on, right? The expression of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, in a single word, is the secret storehouse of the Eshin school of teachings. All that stuff that everybody knows on Mount Hei, right? It's all been clarified by Dengyo's and Dengyo's disciples as it relates to the study of Tentai and Myolo's doctrines. You're with me? All right? So, again, what does it say? Again, there's so much depth here. I wish I could speak twice at the same time. Okay. The perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. Okay, so the perfect teaching is regarded as identical with the truth. Refers to the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Wonderful and identical with the truth are synonymous. Perfect and wonderful are the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, expressed in a single word. Perfect refers to the true aspect of all phenomena. I hope you guys are hearing Nam Myoho Rengekyo being repeated each time I'm saying this.
Yes.
Okay. The commentary, the Annotations on Great Concentration and Insight, Volume 1, explains the word perfect by saying perfect means perfect and interfused, or perfect and full. It means without lacking anything. All right? Perfect and interfused. It's completely containing everything. Perfect and full. It's full. It's not missing a component. It's not missing a part. Perfect in interviews refers to the theoretical teaching. Perfect in full refers to the essential teaching, to the theoretical and the actual. Perfect also refers to the two practices of concentration and insight. Again, it refers to the fact that we are made up of the two elements of body and mind. The expression of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, in a single word, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is the secret storehouse of the Ancient School of Teachings. That's what he's trying to talk about here. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is what links all of the teachings of Shakyamuni, all of the teachings of Nagarjuna, all of the teachings of Tentai and Nanye and Dengyo and Myolo and everybody else I can think to mention. It ties them all together into this perfect teaching that's wrapped up in a little nut for the latter day of the law as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We don't want to go back and have to redo all that stuff. We won't get it done in a single lifetime if we do. That's why we don't have to do all that stuff. We wouldn't be able to pull off what we've been promised we can pull off, Buddhahood in our present form, in the absence of faith. He says on page 23, second full paragraph, in the character in, or perfect, the outer enclosure represents a single moment of life, while the element, it looks like my wife's name here, literally number, represents 3,000 realms. So it's talking about classical Chinese characters. The principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life is unfathomable. So what did that just say? You really can't understand it unless you're a Buddha. This wonderful principle was never expounded in the three teachings previous to the Lotus Sutra, the Tripitaka teaching, the connecting teaching, and the specific teaching. That's why we don't study them, Mr. Lee.
Right.
Therefore, it is called secret, because it wasn't in any of those teachings. From all this, you should understand that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represents the expedient means of the single mind or life. And then there's a asterisk here. It says, here expedient means indicates the 3,000 realms, and the single mind or life indicates a single moment of life. Together they mean the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, or again, Himyo Hoben. This wonderful principle was never expounded in the three teachings previous to the Lotus Sutra, the Tripitaka teaching, the connecting teaching, and the specific teaching. Therefore, it is called secret. From all this, you should understand that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represents the expedient means of a single mind or life. Myoho Renge-kyo represents the ninth consciousness, while the 10 worlds represents the levels from the 8th consciousness on down. Do you understand that? The ninth consciousness is the original state. The ninth consciousness is the region of the unfathomable. The ninth consciousness is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? So, from all this you should understand that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represent the expedient means of the single mind or life. The expedient means for you to understand what I just said with your life, because if you repeat Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and practice the Daishonin Buddhism, you will attain the Buddha, actual Ichinen Sanzen. You will understand this exactly as I'm doing my best to try and help you understand it. From all this, you should understand that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo represents the expedient means, the teaching that with faith in that teaching, rather than questioning and wondering and going backwards instead of going forwards, using that teaching as the mechanism to drive you forward, it becomes that expedient means to circumvent all that shit you'd have to otherwise get your mind candy head around. Okay? Myoho Renge-kyo represents the ninth consciousness, while the 10 worlds represent the levels from the 8th consciousness on down. You should think these matters over carefully. The Ho of Hoben may also refer to the 10 directions. The 10 directions are the same as the 10 worlds. The Ben of Hoben indicates something that is unfathomable in nature. So once again, this is beyond the comprehension of common mortals. Point 2, and unless you can, I don't know. I'm not worried about wrapping it up. I'm going to read these 3 points whether it takes me 2 hours or not.
Okay.
Point 2, page 24. Regarding the words, the wisdom of the Buddhas is infinitely profound and immeasurable. The door to this wisdom is difficult to understand and difficult to enter. Not one of the voice hearers or Pratyeka Buddhas is able to comprehend it. So not one of the voice hearers or cause awakened ones is able to comprehend it. So nobody other than bodhisattvas and up can understand this even if they want to. Okay, Tentai, Words and Phrases, Volume 3 says the first passage praises the true wisdom and then it praises the provisional wisdom. Here, true here refers to the wisdom of the Buddhas, which is again Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This is not the true and provisional that applies to the teachings expounded in accordance with the capacities of people. The 3 teachings prior to the Lotus Sutra, the Tripitaka, the connecting, and the specific teaching. Therefore, the text describes it as the wisdom of the Buddhas. It is a manifestation of the truth the Buddhas realized for themselves. It is a manifestation of the truth the Buddhas realized for themselves, and therefore it is termed wisdom. This is not voice hearers hearing words and then just listening to them and then knowing and understanding them. The comprehension comes of oneself. It won't come from listening to me. All right? It is a manifestation of the truth the Buddhas, plural, all of us, realized for themselves. So you're going to have to do that if you're going to become a Buddha in your present form. And therefore it is termed wisdom. The essence of this wisdom is the 3 kinds of wisdom of a single mind. Infinitely profound and immeasurable are the words of praise applied to this wisdom. That was what I forgot to do. I was going to give you the definition of 3 kinds of wisdom. Let me have it up so it's ready. Okay, so the essence of this wisdom that has already been discussed as the wisdom of the Buddhas, right, is defined as the essence of this wisdom is the 3 kinds of wisdom of a single mind. Now, do you know what that is? Because he's going to mention it again. Let me go ahead and get it out on the front end out of a dictionary definition. I could very quickly say it's just the wisdom to perceive non-substantiality correctly and temporary existence correctly and the truth of the middle way correctly. But let me give you this. The 3 kinds of wisdom explained in the treatise on the great perfection of wisdom, which is Nagarjuna. They are as follows. The wisdom to understand the universal aspect of phenomena. This is the wisdom of persons of the 2 vehicles, voice hearers and cause awakened ones, to understand the truth of non-substantiality or the non-substantial nature of existence. 2, the wisdom to understand the various paths to enlightenment. Bodhisattvas possess this wisdom, which enables them to understand the individual aspects of existence or the truth of temporary existence, as well as the various paths to enlightenment, so that they may save others accordingly. 3, the wisdom to understand both the universal aspect and individual aspects of phenomena. This is the Buddha wisdom, which perceives both the universal aspect and individual aspects of all phenomena, or the middle way, as well as various paths to enlightenment. In Tentai's teachings, one can obtain the 3 kinds of wisdom simultaneously through meditation aimed at perceiving the unifications of the 3 truths in a single mind. Makashikan, great concentration and insight, is exactly what that just was. Hence, it is called the 3 kinds of wisdom in a single mind. Specifically, through perception of the truth of non-substantiality, one obtains the wisdom of the 2 vehicles. Through the perception of the truth of temporary existence, one acquires the wisdom of bodhisattvas. And through the perception of the truth of the middle way, one gains the Buddha wisdom. So you understand, that was very complicated. I'm reading quickly. I'm just trying to get through this. But it says, the essence of this wisdom is the 3 kinds of wisdoms of a single mind, okay? Which is understanding that it's not temporary existence, it's not non-substantiality, it's not all, this is all an illusion, it's all in our mind. You know, reality isn't real. When you get in the flower garden and some of that shit, it's talking about some weird stuff, okay? The essence of this wisdom is the 3 kinds of wisdom of a single mind. Infinitely profound and immeasurable So what did that say? Infinitely profound. So infinitely, without beginning or end, so profound and immeasurable,
Right.
okay, are the words of praise applies to this wisdom. The true wisdom of the Buddhas is of such depth that it can clearly penetrate to the very base of universal truth. What's universal truth? The most basic building block of everything. What is that? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The true wisdom of the Buddhas is of such a depth that it can clearly penetrate to the very base of universal truth. Therefore, it is described as infinitely profound. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is infinitely profound. And it is of such width that it extends to the very limits of the Dharma realm, what we consider reality in any way that it can be perceived, described, or experienced. Therefore, it is described as immeasurable. That's also Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Infinitely profound and immeasurable refers to its vertical and horizontal dimensions, meaning it is infinite any way you look at it. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going horizontally or, okay.
All directions.
To employ a simile, if the roots of a tree reach far down, then its branches will flourish. And if the source of a river is far away, its flow will be long-lasting. Why? If the roots of a tree reach far down, deep enough, they always can get to where there's moisture. They don't hit dryness. They won't lose life as a result, right? The same thing for the river. The farther the source, the more water it's taken for it to get to you. To be able to see as a river now, right? Okay. To employ a simile, if the roots of a tree reach far down, then its branches will flourish. It's talking about getting down to the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as your expedient. Takes you all the way up to horizontal infinity and depth infinity. Do you get it?
Yes.
All right. To employ a simile, if the roots of a tree reach far down, then its branches will flourish. If the source of a river is far down, its flow will be long-lasting. Such are the terms used to describe true wisdom. And those used to describe provisional wisdom follow the same pattern. When the sutra speaks of the door to this wisdom, it is praising the provisional wisdom, that of the wisdom of the bodhisattvas. Okay? We just talked about the three kinds of wisdom, right? Mm-hmm. Right. It is an expedient means that acts as a corridor to the teachings of the Buddha's enlightenment. Because only the bodhisattvas of the earth as bodhisattvas preach the perfect teaching. Do you understand that? You do understand that, right? Okay. A force that enables one to advance on one's way. Because we're not talking about the introduction to the truth. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Therefore, it is described as a door. A door is that by which one enters upon the way. The way one enters upon is the true teaching. Okay, not the first two hobens, right? That are expedient means. The way one enters upon is the true teaching. Himyo-hoben is also the true teaching, even though it's also an expedient means. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. All right. And the corridor leading to the way is the provisional teachings. They get you to the first 14 chapters, get you to the truth of the second 14 chapters. Theoretical Ichiren Sansen gives you a reason to pursue and accomplish actual Ichiren Sansen. It says you can. Right. Without something saying you can, you have no reason to aspire to achieve that which you will not, and without that encouragement. Do you follow? Yes. He says the sutra praises the provisional wisdom. He's saying, why do we do the first 14 chapters and the second 14 chapters? It says, the sutra praises the provisional wisdom by saying that it is difficult to understand and difficult to enter. It is difficult to comprehend. It is difficult comprehension, yet we comprehend it. It has indescribably great assistance to offer. To those acquainted only with the 7 expedient means, it is beyond measuring. Only when one reaches the 10 stages of security. Now again, when we talk, this is one of, again, Mr. Lee's questions is about the 10 stages. You know, there's 52 stages to enlightenment according to Tentai, right? Everybody understands what there's the 10 stages of meditation and the 10 stages of this and the 10 stages of that. One of those 10 stages is the 10 stages of security. You got 5 stages, 10 stages things, okay? And then there's 2 more beyond that. Near perfect enlightenment and perfect enlightenment. Anuttara Samyak Sambodha, okay? So it's saying, where am I? Okay. The sutra praises the provisional wisdom by saying that it is difficult to understand and difficult to enter, because that's in the 2nd chapter, and it's going towards the 16th chapter. It is beyond comprehension, yet we comprehend it. It has indescribably great assistance to offer. To those acquainted only with the 7 expedient means, it is beyond measuring. Only when one reaches the 10 stages of security can one for the first time be said to understand it. Okay, that means that you've heard the name and the words of the truth. I just realized that. Okay. And when one enters the 10 stages of development, one may say said to have entered it. Here we mention only the earlier stages, the stages of security, and the latter stages, the stages of development. During the intervening stages, one comes to realize that this wisdom is truly difficult to expound and difficult to awaken to. Okay, so everything I'm trying to say is really hard to say. The sutra, however, makes a special point of saying that none of the voice hearers or prakyeka Buddhas, cause awakened ones, are able to comprehend it. Because such persons are so heavily weighed down by their attachments, it makes a special point of admonishing them. On the words and phrases, Myolo says, Volume 3, the passage that includes the words refer to its vertical and horizontal dimensions consist of a doctrine, a simile, and a reference to both the true and provisional wisdom. This shows the pattern to be followed. Here, the true wisdom has been interpreted as being vast in its horizontal dimensions and all-reaching in its vertical dimensions or depth. In what follows, we are to understand that the provisional wisdom should be interpreted to be extremely profound in principle. But it's still theoretical. And so it is limited. And so it is not the truth.
Right.
The interpretation of the provisional wisdom is to be given in what follows. And so its characteristics are described in advance in this passage. That is why the commentary says what it does. In the passage, the door to this wisdom, the word "this" refers to the wisdom that is the cause of the true wisdom, mentioned earlier in the text as the wisdom of the Buddhists. If the wisdom here is likened to a door, then it must be provisional. So it's not referring to it, okay? But if this is the door to wisdom, so in other words, it's not talking about it from the theoretical aspect, it is talking about it from the actual aspect, right? So if it was talking about it from the perspective of the expedient means chapter, could only be, the door that it's leading to could only be provisional, okay?
Yes.
It's only when it's perceived through as, okay, do you understand? All right, so. But if this is the door to wisdom, as it's being described, then it can't be from the expedient means. It can't be from that wisdom that's described in the expedient means chapter. It's got to be from the cause, okay? So let me go back. If the wisdom here is likened to a door, then it must be provisional. But if this is the door to wisdom, then the wisdom must be the true wisdom that results from the cause. From the cause. In this passage, therefore, the 10 stages of development are to be understood as a corridor that leads to the way. Okay? Perfect enlightenment as the way itself, and the state following enlightenment as what comes after one has attained the way. Did you follow that? In this passage, therefore, the 10 stages of development, these things that are supposed to be leading to enlightenment, are understood as the corridor that leads to the way. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, the 52nd stage, is actually the perfect enlightenment as the way itself, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and the state following enlightenment as what comes after one has attained the way. What have you attained after you've attained the way?
The Buddha way.
Buddhahood! Again, the answer is always Buddhahood. Every time I ask a question, just say Buddhahood automatically, and you'll pretty much always have the right answer. Therefore, one should understand that the purpose underlying this passage is to describe the cause that leads to enlightenment. So, what is the cause? Faith. Faith. Because what has he just already clarified in the expedient means chapter? I've already said that. Not one of the voice hearers or cause awakened ones can even comprehend it. Only the bodhisattvas. Why? Because they're already on the path of faith. They already went by the people who want to hear a bunch of, mind candy.
Right.
They want to hear a bunch of shit. They want to just, let me listen. Those are the voice hearers. Cause awakened ones are the ones that are going into the work of a contemplative prayer. Okay? Coming up with conclusions on their own by seeking. But the bodhisattvas are teachers that take those and say, hey, let's get you out of that trying to figure everything out on your own and hook you up with the Buddha way, which we all are actually on. You actually have been doing the Buddha way as it relates to realization. Okay? You're in the wrong Hoban. Let me get you to Himyo Hoban, right? Okay, so he's saying, all right, where am I? Okay. Okay. I turned a page and I spaced out on where I was. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to go back and read it so I can read it consistently because I don't care how long it takes. In the passage, the door of this wisdom, the word this refers to the wisdom that is the cause of true wisdom mentioned earlier in the text as the wisdom of the Buddhists. If the wisdom here is likened to a door, then it must be provisional. If this is the door to wisdom, then the wisdom must be the true wisdom that results from the cause. In this passage, therefore, the 10 stages of development are to be understood as the corridor that leads to the way, perfect enlightenment as the way itself, and the state following enlightenment as what comes after one has attained the way. Therefore, one should understand that the purpose underlying this passage is to describe the cause that leads to enlightenment. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, the meaning of this passage in words and phrases, tentai, and the commentary on it in on words and phrases, myolo, is perfectly clear. In the passage referring to the vertical and horizontal dimensions, the vertical dimensions represent the essential teaching, and the horizontal dimensions represent the theoretical teaching. The roots are the roots of a plant or tree. Plants and trees in their growth climb upward. Hence, the roots here stand for the theoretical teaching that leads upward to enlightenment. It's the basis of the starting of the path. Hence, the roots that here stand for the theoretical teaching that leads one upward to the enlightenment in the essential teaching. The source represents the essential teaching. The source is the fountainhead from which the river flows. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Rivers flow downward. Hence, the source here stands for the essential teaching from which enlightenment flows downward from the original state. The flourishing branches stand for the 14 chapters of the theoretical teaching of the Lotus Sutra, and the long-lasting flow or river stands for the 14 chapters of the essential teaching. The wisdom referred to is the 3 kinds of wisdom in a single mind that I just talked about a minute ago. The door is the door that enables one to enter into this wisdom. The essence of the 3 kinds of wisdom of a single mind is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and the door is the mind of faith. Okay? The wisdom referred to is the 3 kinds of wisdom of a single mind, which was what was being discussed even all the way back in the Makashikan. But nobody could understand it because it wasn't the teaching for that time. How could you understand it? The correct teaching that makes it all make sense didn't exist yet. The wisdom referred to is the three kinds of wisdom of a single mind, the threefold contemplation of a single mind, which is the basis of great concentration and insights, the contemplative meditative process of attaining Buddhahood, according to Tintai. Are you guys with me? All right. The door is the door that enables one to enter into this wisdom that you get from mastering the Makashikan, but we get from just mastering Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Right.
The essence of the three kinds of wisdom of a single mind, okay, which we've already discussed, is the true understanding of non-substantiality, the true understanding of temporary existence, and the true understanding of the truth of the middle way. Mm-hmm. He says, the essence of the three kinds of wisdom in a single mind is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. That's what I've been saying all this time, over and over again. And the door to this mind is the mind of faith. Okay? So the passage in Volume 2 of the Lotus Sutra, Chapter 3, similarly in parable, says, even you, Shariputra, in the case of this sutra, were able to gain entrance through faith alone. Here, entrance is the same in meaning as door. Now, when Nichiren and his followers recite Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are giving expression to this wisdom. The simile in the parable chapter says, this house has only one gate, one door. With regard to gates, there is the gate of being, the gate of emptiness, the gate that is both being and emptiness, and the gate that is neither being or emptiness. The gate of being is birth, the gate of emptiness is death, the gate of being, the gate that is both being and emptiness is the birth and death of a single mind or life. The gate that is neither being nor emptiness is that which is not birth and not death. The gate of being exemplified by the five characters that make up the gate of being is exemplified by the five characters that make up the Daimoku. The gate of emptiness is exemplified by the way in which these five characters are endowed with all the phenomena of the universe, without respect to any one particular direction or another. The gate of both being and emptiness is exemplified by the way in which these five characters are endowed with the essential and theoretical teachings. And the gate is that is neither being nor emptiness is exemplified by the underlying meaning of the whole sutra. This kind of inner enlightenment is not something that can be comprehended by the wisdom of the people of the two vehicles who have yet to hear the Lotus Sutra. Therefore, Volume 3 of Words and Phrases says, to those acquainted only with the seven expedient means, it is beyond measuring. Now Nichiren and his followers have gained entrance to this wisdom. Therefore, when the verse passage in Chapter 2 of the Lotus Sutra says, among other kinds of living beings, there are none who can comprehend it, except the many bodhisattvas who are firm in the power of faith. It is referring to persons like us, yes, who are bodhis of the Lotus Sutra. Mm-hmm. So let me, real quick, and then I'll be done. What time is it?
9:42.
It's 9:42. Real time 9:42? Yes. Holy shit, I'll stop there then. The bottom line is that if you reread, now when Nichiren and his followers recite Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are giving expression to this wisdom. If you read all of this one more time, or two more times, or three more times, figure out what it's really saying in this paragraph. Until next time. And again, that's why we don't do the orally transmitted teachings very often, because it's very, very, very difficult to get through. It's very difficult to just take up because somebody had a question, right, and suddenly to give an extemporaneous, this all builds on itself and builds on itself. To Lauren, I will answer your question that you passed through Sling next week before we start the teachings for victory. But after that, I'm going to stay away from this stuff for a while till we get through the next thing again. Thank you.
Thank you.